Overrated parts of the Appalachian Trail. I think that McAfee Knob is overrated.
Mount Washington. To get to the top, and then there's just like a bunch of cars and there's a bunch of buildings and stuff. That was a bit of a bummer.
Grayson Highlands.
Oh boy.
I'm not saying we should kill the ponies or anything like that.
Was that ever an option?
I'm gonna go with the stairs at Amicalola Falls. I hiked up those stairs in like 2 seconds, and then I forgot they existed 2 seconds later.
The next one I had was shelters in general. Mice crawling over you, or mice falling from the rafters in the middle of the night.
Okay, next overrated spot on the AT. This one is Mount Katahdin. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Trail Tales. My name is Kyle O'Grady. I am a huge hiking nerd like you wouldn't believe. And every single week on this podcast, I chat with other hiking nerds about their experiences on the trail. And this week's guest is definitely a hiking nerd. If you've been listening to the show for a long time, you know him and you love him. If you're new, if you're watching on YouTube especially, then this might be your first time meeting the one and only Baker Bokorney. Baker, welcome to Trail Tales. Welcome to your first video episode of Trail Tales.
I know. I just waved. I don't know if I'm supposed to wave.
You can wave. You can wave.
I'll wave again. I'll wave again. Yeah, this is weird because I'm looking at, I'm just looking at my phone. So I'm like trying to have a conversation with just the backside of my phone, but that's okay. I'm going to just, if I have a cold stare, just that's why. Yeah,
well, it'll be all right. So if you're listening on, Spotify or Apple or whatever, if you're listening to audio only right now, dude, what are you doing? You've heard all of these episodes with Baker over the years, but you don't even know what he looks like. He barely posts on his Instagram. You got to go to YouTube so you can see his face. And he's got a great setup, by the way. I'm just sitting in my living room, and all I have is the stupid banner. But Baker has this beautiful setup. He's got like an AT symbol. He's got a photo album, I think, from him and his wife.
From the AT, yep. So
cool.
Jessica did the background setup. So this is not. I can't claim that I did this. She thought about it. She's like, she even had like multiple options, like on the other side, if the lighting was better over there. So she really thought it through.
Okay, well, it looks great. So Baker, thank you for coming back on. Thank you for doing it video. And by the way, you have like
I'm excited.
You have like a booger or something. I think it is. Do you want to just get that? Yeah, there it is.
Okay.
No,
can we just pick my nose in?
Yeah.
Here we go. This old trick. Oh.
This is gonna be a great episode.
I did earlier. I did have a booger like before we started recording, and I was like, I really gotta watch out for that now, because
yeah.
Or just have the camera like up high enough where like you can't see up the nostrils. I think that's kind of the important part.
Yeah. There's been multiple times over the course of my YouTube content career where I've filmed an entire video and then looked back at the footage and noticed that I had like a booger or like something on my face. Like, yeah, it's not good.
Really? Like entire videos?
Yes, entire videos. And so now every time before I film, I brush my teeth, I floss, I blow my nose, and I shave. I have this whole routine. Unless I'm on trail, then I pick my ass and hit record. But that's different because on trail,
hilarious. I mean, it makes sense. Things I would never think of, but now I'm thinking about it now that I'm being recorded in video. So
But anyways, we are going to be doing overrated parts of the Appalachian Trail because nothing brings the trail community together like talking about how shitty parts of the trail are. This is
just complaining. Complaining is a shared bonding exercise. Like we're just gonna get together and just like everyone loves to complain. It's just in our nature, I think.
Yeah, it is. No, it's gonna be fun for real. I'm excited, and I don't know, Baker. Do you want to start us off? What is the first over? And this isn't in any. Actually, let me clarify this. This is not in any particular order. And there wasn't really like a super strict criteria for this either. It was kind of just like, it could be specific places on the AT. It could be towns. It could be entire states or sections of the trail. Just anything at all related to the AT that is overrated, basically. So that's the criteria.
Yeah. Most other places, there's one that's just it's a thing that's everywhere on the trail, so it's kind of like that's kind of the oddball, but we'll get to it. Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and start us off then, Baker?
All right, looking at the show notes. Okay, first one is for overrated will be Blood Mountain. Just kind of going Nobo, and what I mean by that is not that the view is bad, but specifically what I'm talking about is like the climb up was like, I guess what I'm thinking of is like kind of the few miles like leading up to Blood Mountain, going northbound at least. I remember a lot of people on trail talking about how there was like, oh, this is huge, Blood Mountain's coming up, this is huge climb, you know, we're never going to survive. Like, you know, like just kind of like that not like really fear mongering, but a little bit of the kind of like, you know, just talking about how hard it's going to be.
Yeah.
And so just, I had this expectation that it was just going to be absolutely brutal. And I don't know, it got to the top. I was like, that wasn't that bad. Like, I don't know. So to me, that felt like in terms of the difficulty it was like, you know, the claimed difficulty of climbing it was like, it didn't lead up to that. It didn't live up to that expectation.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good one. I actually almost put Blood Mountain on my list. I'm not going to lie. I thought about it. I think maybe for slightly different reasons. I think I was more going for how it's just like the first like big climb on the AT, other than I guess the approach trail. And I feel like it just has like a lot of hype because of that. And I was like, but I get what you're saying for sure. And this is actually a great segue into my first one, because instead of doing Blood Mountain, I put Neil's Gap as an overrated spot on the AT.
Just the spot in general? Like, what about it?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I see what you mean. Yes. It's like, just like, because Neil's Gap, I guess, is like a hyped up early thing that you're going to, you know, early notable point that you're going to encounter going northbound on the trail. And so you meant like you got there and you were just like, it's just whatever.
Yeah. And listen, there's probably some like AT hopeful who's going to be leaving in like a month and a half here that's hearing this. And they're like, Neil's Gap sucks. But we're not saying it sucks. But I thought it was a little bit overrated. It's like the first place you stop on your thru hike. It's the first place to resupply. And it is like an iconic part of the AT, which I feel like a lot of the things I'm going to mention are kind of iconic parts in this video. But like, I don't know. It's just a store, and like the arch is cool, I guess. And the tree with the boots is cool. But other than that, it's just a gear store, and they don't really have, or I guess I don't really know for sure because it's been a few years since we've thru hiked. But in 2018, all it had for food was like some frozen pizzas. So I don't know. It's cool, but I'm glad it's there. But it's not like.
What were you expecting? I guess what were you thinking it was going to be, and then like why was that what was it? What did it not have?
I mean, it pretty much was on par with my expectations. I just feel like just because it is the first stop, it's just so iconic. And so I'm not even saying that people are out there like hyping it up. Like, dude, Neil's Gap is like the sickest thing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you really hear many people like saying that even. But I don't know. It's just like, it is just an iconic spot. And so I just feel like that comes with a lot of just like built in, maybe not even hype isn't the right word, but just like fame. I don't know. It's just, it's just not that special.
Yeah. I think there's hype. To me, it's hype because it's kind of a milestone in terms of mileage, I feel like.
Oh, yeah.
Because I agree, like the store, it's cool that there's like a store, like a gear store and a pretty decent resupply, like right on trail like that. But yeah, it's nothing like particularly amazing about it, but I feel like it's more hyped as like a actual milestone in terms of like the distance you've traveled since the beginning. At least that's kind of how I thought of it.
Yeah.
Is like, I mean, the 30 miles and like, it sounds funny, like in the grand scheme of things, by the time you're at the end, like 30 miles is nothing, but I don't know, when it's like, you're just beginning, you're like, wow, 30 miles is I don't know. I guess it felt like a big deal, but yeah, I know what you mean. Like the spot itself, I think it's what I expected. I would agree with that. It wasn't like, it didn't blow my mind when I went there. But I thought it is just kind of like in the lore of the Appalachian Trail. It's obviously like a super iconic spot. Like you said, the tree and the arch and all that stuff. But yeah, I could see thinking it's overrated. That kind of makes sense.
I'm going to get some hate for this one for sure, dude.
Definitely. I think we're going to get hate for a lot of these.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a... Again, it's all for fun, okay? Like, people are going to be like, you assholes just took an hour to complain about the AT. Like, what is this? But
and this is YouTube, so we're going to see all the comments, so it's gonna...
don't read the comments, Baker. Don't read the comments.
I'm not planning on it.
They'll never see you again. No, I'm just kidding.
I can't handle it.
No, I'm going to be deleting every comment that isn't just nothing but glowing positivity on this very negative episode. So
I mean,
just
if they're
keep that in
being
mind.
like super mean, then that makes sense. But if there's like legitimate gripes, then you got to leave it in there.
Well,
I think
of course.
I could take some criticism.
I'm joking. Yeah. That's like generally my philosophy when it comes to comments is if you leave a comment that's constructive criticism or legitimate gripes, I guess, in Baker's words, then I'm never going to delete that stuff. But if you're just going to write like, oh, like fucking Kyle's background is way shittier than Baker's, fuck him. If you're going to write something like
that, leave that one in there.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'll leave that one, but
please do write so many of them, people that he can't keep up. That's what I want.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways. Okay. Now that we're done complaining about the very first iconic milestone on the AT, what is the next overrated, in your opinion, part of the AT?
All right. The next one for me was Mount Washington. And
good
it's
one.
not, I mean, I think we kind of talked about this a little bit as we were like kind of preparing for this episode, but I think part of like the experience that you have in a place, which can be, can change based on like the weather or the people around you, whatever, definitely kind of colors. It obviously,
totally.
It colors and influences the experience. But for me, I think what was overrated. So Mount Washington, it is absolutely beautiful up there. But the part that just kind of bummed me out, there's one thing that's is a legitimate gripe, and there's another one that's an incredibly petty gripe, which I fully admit. The first one, which I think is legitimate, is that it's just kind of a bummer when like there's a bunch of cars driving around on top of a mountain. This is also the case, like I've had the same experience, like in Colorado, there's like a couple 14ers that you can drive your car to. I think it's great that people like that there are super high peaks you can drive to because it makes them more accessible. And I think that's awesome. But for me, if I'm going to climb a peak, when I get to the summit, my preference is that like, it's just, there's not like a big, I don't know, there's not a ton of infrastructure up there, I guess. And there's not like a parking lot and there's not like a giant hut with donuts. I mean, I guess like sometimes it's kind of cool, but I don't know. That's kind of a bummer. So that's part of it is like you do a ton of work.
There's donuts up there? I know there's a food court.
Sorry. Excuse me. I'm thinking of Pikes Peak, which is
I was
14er Colorado. That does have donuts too. But
I was like, I knew Mount Washington had a food court. I didn't know. I was like, was there like a Dunkin' up there? That'd be very New England. True. So I guess I wouldn't be sure.
No, that's true. That'd be on brand. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I think for me, it's just the fact that there are cars. And again, I'm not opposed to peaks. I'm not mad that Mount Washington has a road to the top, but for me, like it's kind of like it's the tallest point. Is it the tallest point on the east? No, it's the second highest point on the East Coast. But either way, it's a big deal. Like it's a big milestone on the hike, and you're in the Whites, and which is also kind of a huge place. That section is like a big deal to be there. And so Mount Washington is like the pinnacle of that whole section, and to get to the top, and then there's just like a bunch of cars and there's a bunch of buildings and stuff. That was a bit of a bummer for me. Okay, now that's the first gripe. The second one, which is like just a totally petty complaint, is that at the top of Mount Washington, there's a sign that says like Mount Washington, whatever. And like, it's pretty common that you try to get your photo taken there. And so it's like, I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, but basically I remember, it was a beautiful day, tons of cars up there. It might've been like a Saturday or something, but basically Jessica and I waiting in line to take us a photo at the sign, and people who had driven up where I was like waiting behind them, and I felt like I should just get to cut to the front of the line. Like I shouldn't have to wait behind these people who drove up there, which I admit is completely petty. But I just remember thinking that while standing in line, and I'm not proud to admit that, but that was kind of, it felt a little, again, it's kind of like adds to like the whole, like when you have a road up there, it just turns into a bit more of a zoo. And so it's not quite the same experience as like a remote peak. And so, yeah, that's the petty complaint. But yeah, what do you think about Washington?
I think those are all fair. I will say also the fact that this is a video podcast now, Baker, this comes with live fact checking, and fact check false on the assumption that Mount Washington is the second highest peak in the East. It's not.
Oh,
it is the highest in the Northeast.
North Carolina?
Yeah, it's another North Carolina one. It is up there though. So anyways,
wow, thank you. I'm glad
I'm saving you from the commenters basically.
No, that's good.
I'm doing here.
That's good.
But no, I agree. Like I didn't include Mount Washington on my list, but it's a good one, I think. I think this is like almost low-hanging fruit. And I think this would probably make most people's list. The food court thing, the road thing, again, like I get it. It's like cool to have, it more accessible and stuff. But as a hiker, yeah, it's always going to be a little bit of a bummer, just the way it is. And I didn't even think about the line thing. When you first said Mount Washington, I thought it was just going to be all about like the road and stuff. But the line, the fact that you have to wait in line to take a picture at this top.
It wasn't even a long line. It was like 5 people long. And to be honest, it was convenient that there were other people there because they took the photo for Jessica and I. But I do remember having that thought. And like probably like a second after I had the thought, I then had the thought of like, I'm so entitled, like what a terrible person I am. But I still distinctly remember having that thought. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like, I guess when you see someone like stand next to a sign, it's like elevation 6,000 whatever feet. And it's like, that's cool, but like you drove up here, you know. I know that sounds super elitist, but I don't know.
No,
or like I walked here from Georgia, so yeah, that's all just the terrible elitist parts of my brain, you know, popping up there. So that's definitely the kind of thought that I do not want hikers to be espousing, and I try to like suppress those because that's a totally awful mindset to have. But I do remember having that thought and being like, that's kind of funny that I think I'm entitled to skip the line for the just take a photo by the sign. I was like, that's such a ridiculous idea. But yeah,
it's funny though. The first time I hiked Mount Washington, it was before the AT, it was just a day hike. Me and my friend Dan got up there and the line was super long. It was way longer than it was my second time. Yeah. And we were just like, yo, fuck that. But we still wanted to tag the top. And so we just like, I'm pretty sure we're in the background of someone's picture, just like touching the sign, basically, just to say that we hit like the top of the mountain. And then we, you know, got the hell out of there and ate a chili dog or whatever. But I don't know. Yeah, Mount Washington is a good one for sure. Mount Washington, dude. What the hell is going on with that place? I don't know. But what I do know is that this episode is sponsored by Garage Grown Gear, your one-stop shop for all things ultralight and cottage backpacking gear. That's right. If you're thinking about, I don't know, hiking Mount Washington or any other place on the Appalachian Trail or the entire Appalachian Trail for that matter, you need to be shopping at Garage Grown Gear. How many times have you looked around online, on Reddit, or even seen YouTube videos or podcasts with all this information about these specific cottage ultralight gear companies? There's just so many different ones out there. They're so hard to keep track of. I swear every time I open up Instagram, I see a new one popping up on my feed. This is where Garage Grown Gear comes in. There's just one online store, one website that has a ton of these different ultralight companies on it. So you don't need to go to 10 different websites to check out 10 different packs, for instance. You can just look at all the packs that Garage Grown Gear has on their site. It's perfect. I know the CEO of Garage Grown Gear, Lloyd Vogel, personally. He's been on the show before. I met him at Trail Days. Some of you guys might remember that whole thing. And so I can personally vouch for how cool this guy is and how cool his company is. One thing that I absolutely love about Garage Grown Gear is they're always looking for small and new companies to add to their website. A lot of these companies I'm sure that you have never even heard of. And when they're looking for new companies, they're not just looking for whatever's going to make them the most money. Actually, again, some of you might recall from the podcast I did with Lloyd, they actually lose money on a lot of companies, but they like to bring them on because they make cool gear and they believe in them and they believe in supporting them. Garage Grown Gear is so cool. And so what you should do is go to garagegrowngear.com and just start browsing. Look through it. They have so much cool stuff on there. Literally any type of ultralight gear imaginable. They got it. One more time, garagegrowngear.com. I guarantee you're going to find some cool new items and some cool new companies that you've never heard of. So thank you so much to Garage Grown Gear for sponsoring this podcast. And let's get back to the episode. Okay. This next one is this one. I am going to get some shit for this one. I should get some shit for it because this... Okay, so remember how hype I was about the new Trail Tales artwork and stuff? It's kind of old news at this point, but how the picture of you, Baker, holding your pack on the most photographed spot on the entire Appalachian Trail, McAfee Knob. Well, personally, I think that McAfee Knob is overrated, so sue me. What are you going to do about it? I don't know. It's just like, it's cool, but it's just so crowded. Again, also going back to what you said about like how a lot of these are going to have to do with your personal experience at them. The day that I did it, dude, I had diarrhea. It was super hot out. It was it was a bad day, man. It was a bad day.
Yeah.
And so when I think back on McAfee Knob, I don't think about how I was so blessed to be at the most photographed, one of the most iconic spots on the entire Appalachian Trail. I was thinking about how I needed to go like wipe my ass and how it was really hot and there's a lot of like day hikers up there and probably also had to wait in line to take a photo. And that was my experience. And then your experience obviously was the polar opposite because you ended up getting that sick photo that is now the cover for this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. So I totally disagree, but I think it's probably mostly just because of like the context in which we were there. I think, if I was feeling ill and it was a hot day and I got to like the middle of the day and there was like just a mob of people up there, I think I probably would have. I mean, it wouldn't have been nearly as special of an experience, but we got there at sunset on the first day. So there were basically no more day hikers, right? I mean, I guess there maybe could have been, but pretty much it was all other thru hikers up there. And it was like 10 people or something like that. So we all get to take like a huge, ton of great photos. And obviously the sunset was incredible. Like as the photo shows, like it just was like, it was a perfect sunset. The weather was perfect. And then we camped nearby and then we went back for sunrise the next day. Again, got there before sunrise, perfect weather, just other, like maybe 10 other thru hikers up there. So yeah, Jessica and I had an awesome experience and got to like twice up there, had like a super amazing sunset, sunrise. And so, yeah, that's just a totally different experience than you had. Or like if someone got there like in a day it was fogged over, there's no way that their experience would be like, as cool, like, and so I can totally understand why it felt overrated to you. Like, and that's funny for me, it's the complete opposite. Like that was definitely like that spot exceeded expectations, but that was just luck. I don't know. We probably intentionally timed it. Jessica's in the background saying, yeah, we did. So, but either way. Yeah. So no, I get it. I totally get why that's but again, you're going to get a bunch of people who probably have been there and had a crappy time. And then you have people who, you're going to have a bunch of converts who are like, it was the best thing ever. So yeah, I know what you mean. You're probably it's definitely, that's going to be a polarizing opinion, I think.
So here's the thing. Let's take our experiences out of it for a second and just look at this more objectively. When you do that, I still think it's overrated though, because like it's a cool, and just because something's overrated doesn't mean that it's not cool, to be clear. Like, doesn't mean it sucks, right? But there's so many other really cool views on the AT. Why does this one get all the hype and the other ones you don't even know about? The reason is because it's just where everyone takes the photo. And so I think, I don't know, like we live in this.
It's the outcropping.
I honestly am so full of shit. I'm just for argument's sake here, like we're so obsessed with social media and like taking photos. I'm losing everyone, I can tell. And all this stuff.
I think I see where you're going here.
It's like, that is kind of what makes McAfee Knob. And that's what makes it so like special and so iconic, is just because of the photo op. And so what about all the other views that don't have quite as good of a photo op, but are still like sick,
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. So the experience of just standing on it, you don't necessarily know. I mean, I guess if you saw it from like on the approach, you would see that it's a huge, slab sticking out or an overhanging rock thing. And so, but standing on it, you don't necessarily know that. I do think I think I got to the edge and just like stuck my head over. Like I didn't stick my legs over because I was too afraid. But like seeing down and just seeing nothing below me, that was really cool. But I also knew that was coming. So I guess I don't normally do that at viewpoints because you don't expect that to be the case. But I know what you mean. Like just the view itself is not particularly exciting. Probably like almost any view in the whites for me is going to be like a way more aesthetic view, like and more aesthetically pleasing to look at. But I know what you mean. Like if we weren't trying to take a photo, if you just for some reason you broke your camera, broke your phone on the way up there, and you couldn't take a photo, how many people would still enjoy it? And same with me. Like if we didn't get those amazing, I mean, I think I still enjoyed it because the sunset was truly like
sunrise,
some of the best sunset. Yeah. I mean, it was like the colors were incredible. But yeah, I don't know. I know I can see what you're saying though. I think that makes sense. It is for like taking the photo op is a major part of what makes it so cool, because the standing up there, you don't necessarily, I mean, you conceptually know you're on a big overhanging rock thing, but it doesn't really feel like it. It feels like just kind of another viewpoint. So
yeah, exactly.
I can see your point there.
Yeah, we gotta take ourselves away from the photo ops and off of social media. And by the way, guys, go follow me on Instagram because I'm actually going to be posting. I'm actually serious. Go follow me on Instagram because sometimes I post polls and like little forums where you can actually like submit questions and guest ideas and stuff like that. I wasn't actually even planning on making that plug, but I just felt like that would be kind of funny.
I thought you were going to say sometimes I'm going to post all the photos from my day where I'm like, feeling like
I have the most epic McAfee Knob photos. Yeah. No. Okay. Next overrated spot on the AT. What do you think, Baker?
Okay. This is not a single spot. This is like hundreds of spots. Okay. But basically, shelters in general.
I knew you were going to say that when you mentioned this at the beginning of the episode. But that interesting one. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So shelters. I mean, I think when you're going into the hike, you're researching the trail, and you're like, wow, there are like these 3-sided structures that have a roof on them. Like that sounds in theory, like just the sound of that, having that out in the middle of the woods sounds great. And don't get me wrong, there were times when I was super glad that a shelter was in a particular place. But I think we only slept in a shelter maybe 10 times? Jessica thinks less than that. Over the whole trail. And there are like hundreds of shelters for anyone who's not aware of how there's literally like shelters everywhere on the AT.
So you can easily 5 miles-ish. Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah. So I mean, you could easily spend pretty much every night in a shelter if you want to. And to be fair, we actually would camp near shelters like a lot, very often, because there's also usually like areas for tent camping, and then you're usually like near a water source, and that's like where all your friends are stopping for the night anyway. So we often would stay near shelters, but we would rarely stay in the shelter itself, because there's a kind of a lot of reasons, but I think the biggest ones are, one, if it's buggy, you're just getting hit by bugs. You're getting attacked by bugs, which really sucks. And in your tent, you've got netting. And then the other big one, which I'm sure like everyone would guess this, is mice, and not just mice getting in your food, which sucks, but like mice crawling over you, or mice falling from the rafters in the middle of the night. And then you're like, what was that? And you put your hand and you just feel fur scurry out from under your...
So brutal.
I remember just feeling a little bit of fur just scurry out from my hand, and then just like the tail just sliding through my finger. Oh, it's just like awful. And Jessica had basically an identical experience, where I'm sure most people have had, where not only is it like crawling over you or it's like eating your food, it's like it just falls from the rafters or jumps down from the rafters or somewhere from above you, and it just lands on you in the middle of the night, wakes you up, and you're like, what was that? It's just like, I don't know. So I guess that's my diatribe on shelters. They're just kind of, and honestly, they're kind of run. This depends. Some shelters are like really new and well maintained. Some are pretty decrepit. Some are sometimes there's people kind of living in them. That's definitely not super common, but there were people who were like, you've got a pretty permanent-ish setup here. You're not going to pack this up. You don't like unpack and repack this setup every day and night. Like you could tell they're kind of out there for the summer or whatever. So I guess the one redeeming quality of a shelter is like the logbook can be kind of fun sometimes, but that's kind of hit or miss. So anyway, that's my diatribe on shelters. What do you think?
Baker logbook connoisseur Bokorney. I disagree with this one so hard.
Whoa.
So hard. Really? I love shelters.
Wow.
I love mice. I mean, one of the biggest reasons why I hiked the AT was to see all sorts of different wildlife, and I may have only seen, 1 moose and 2 bears, but I saw plenty of mice, and I really appreciated that.
That's true. How could I? Yeah, that's true. It's part of the wilderness experience to see a bunch of mice everywhere. How could I not think of that?
Snacking on Pop-Tart crumbs and No, I don't appreciate the mice, but I do love shelters. I do genuinely disagree with you on this one, Baker. And I don't even. Okay, I agree on your reasons for not wanting to stay in the shelters. I'll say that, mice included. I, generally speaking, never stayed in shelters unless it was really bad weather. But when it's bad weather, by the way, those shelters are nice. I don't care how many smelly hikers you're crammed in there with. Like
100%.
They're 100%. Great. But even that aspect aside, which is probably the reason why they exist, I don't know. I just thought they were really cool. They were great to stop at. Like, even though I didn't usually sleep in them, they were great. Like during the day, like you stop for lunch. Like it's so much more convenient and more comfortable to sit in a shelter than it is to sit on the dirt somewhere. They're just cool. Like a lot of the times they're different, unique designs, and not always. Like the Forest Service has their standard lean-to design, but the majority of them are unique designs. And so I always loved, like, you never know what you're going to get. Shelters are like a box of chocolates. It's like you roll up to a shelter. It could just be like a 3-sided lean-to, or it could be a freaking mansion with multiple floors and picnic tables.
It could be, Over Mountain Shelter, which I don't know if that's still up anymore.
Oh, the barn. Yeah, I think they closed that. That one was.
Yeah, that's technically a barn. But
that thing was a death trap.
It is, but it was beautiful. I mean, we didn't stay in there. We ate lunch in there, but like the view was incredible. Yeah. And it is aesthetically a pleasing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And keep going. You're kind of convincing me otherwise. Keep going.
And I don't know. And since the AT, I've gone on to hike quite a bit, on trails that don't have shelters like the PCT. And I missed them dearly. I'm not going to lie. In fact, when I think about shorter trails I want to thru hike in the future, a lot of the time I'm kind of drawn to trails that have shelters. Like the Ouachita Trail that I hiked with Luke this time last year. Yeah. One of the big reasons why I wanted to do that trail was because it had shelters.
Really?
I don't even care about staying in them that much, but I just like the concept of shelters. And so I don't think they're overrated at all. And I wish every trail had them, to be honest, but that's just me.
That's interesting because I guess the main reason I thought they were overrated is because I didn't stay I stayed like, maybe 8 something nights over the whole trail. So my mind was like, well, that means they're kind of overrated. Like they're there and I barely utilized them. But you're right. Like eating lunch at one is great. And I think another thing that you kind of mentioned, but is like another big part of it is that they're like a natural gathering place for people to hang out, even if you're not, for camping, of course, but also just for like meeting up in the middle of the day. It's like it's a giant structure in the middle of the woods. So it's a natural place to be like, well, you get to one, you're going to stop, because you're like, I'm just going to sit down here. So that actually was kind of a nice part of it too. Is like kind of a natural gathering place. There's a lot of like social things going on around shelters unless socializing happens, on a trail in the middle of the woods. But yeah, okay. You've kind of convinced me a little bit in the other direction. I still think they're kind of nasty though. Good.
Okay, next overrated spot on the AT. This one is, I think most people are going to agree with this one. This one is Mount Katahdin. No, just kidding. Mount Katahdin's fucking sick, dude.
I'm going to end this podcast right now.
No, this one is...
Although Jessica would agree with you. She does not like Mount Katahdin.
Okay, well, I'll have to save that for her next episode.
Yeah. Anyway, don't want to derail us.
That'll be a good title. Confronting the AT thru hiker who hates Mount Katahdin. No. Okay.
Probably a good title, yeah.
This next one, I'm going to go with the stairs at Amicalola Falls, which technically this isn't part of the AT because it's part of the approach trail, but it might as well be part of the AT. It's, again, a very famous, iconic thing in AT lore is like, oh, you start at Amicalola and then you hike up the stairs, like super infamous. They're going to destroy you. I hiked up those stairs in like 2 seconds and then I forgot they existed 2 seconds later. Like maybe it's just because I'm a savage, but I don't know, dude. The stairs, I forgot they even existed until I was making this list, and I had to go deep into the memory. I didn't even take a picture of them. They're just stairs. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think about the stairs?
I was trying to remember if I had that on my list because I think Jessica and I talked about it. But yeah, the stairs at Amicalola are, in terms of difficulty, I think is specifically what you mean.
I mean, in general. Most of the time when they're talked about in reference to their difficulty. I didn't think they were difficult. I also just, I don't know, like they're just stairs. They're not even natural. Like, I mean, they're like literally wooden stairs, like near a parking lot. I don't know. They were cool. Like, there's a cool waterfall. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying they get a lot of hype.
They do. You're right. They do get a lot of hype, and I agree. They weren't. I don't recall them being that difficult. In fact, Jessica and I got to go back to the stairs like a couple months ago because there was a family wedding going on in North Georgia, and so we're pretty close to Amicalola. We should go back. And Jessica was able to climb. We were like, so she's got her knee injury, and so doing things like stairs is like it's not always clear if she'd be able to do it or not. But she did them very like we got to the top, we're like that wasn't that hard. So yeah, if she can do it like with like a knee brace on and like only a couple of her knee ligaments still in there, like yeah, they're not like that. I don't recall them. Do you think they were hard? They weren't hard for you. Like you cruised up them.
No.
So yeah,
and the reason I think they're so like infamous and hard is because a lot of people start the AT that don't have any. I mean, I'm just gonna say it like, I'm not trying to be a gatekeeper here, but they just don't have any clue what they're doing, and so they're carrying way too much gear. They've never hiked before, and this is the first obstacle, literally the number one obstacle they face, like right out the gate, right out the arch, and for that reason, it's just straight up with, if you think about it this way, you've never hiked before, maybe you're not in the best of shape, at least, you're certainly not used to hiking. You're wearing a pack with way too much gear in it, and you don't know how to wear it correctly either, so it's probably not very comfortable, and you immediately start going up really steep stairs. Like, yeah, it's going to be kind of difficult. And so I think that's where the Amicalola Falls stairs infamy comes from. But I get it. Yeah. Like in that circumstance, like I get it. I'm not saying that like if the stairs were hard for you, then you're just like a piece of shit or whatever, But I'm just saying, like, I mean, objectively, they're compared to a lot of other stuff on the trail, compared to pretty much everything else on the trail, like they're not that hard.
Yeah, it's actually not that long of a climb in general. Like, I mean, compared to like even Blood Mountain, I feel like Blood Mountain's probably twice as long of a. Well, I could be wrong about that, but I would say Blood Mountain was probably a longer climb than the stairs. Like it took me longer to go from the bottom to the top than the stairs.
Oh yeah, definitely. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah. What do you think the next one is, Baker?
All right, so the next one I had was the mud in Vermont, and in terms, or just Vermud, like all these ideas that Vermont is just insanely muddy and that it's awful. I mean, this is kind of hard because objectively there was a significant amount of mud compared to other parts of the trail. But really, for me, like, and this is obviously going to be seasonally dependent or just that particular year or whatever. So this maybe, at least for me though, again, if we're going off like what our personal experiences were on the trail, the mud was just not that bad. I think Jessica disagrees, but for me, it was just like, it was kind of an inconvenience. And I guess I enjoyed Vermont so much otherwise, it didn't like ruin the experience. And it was right at the beginning. It's kind of before you're like really getting in the mountains. And then, I don't know, the mud essentially ended. And then, I don't know, from there it was like the trail was awesome. But I don't recall having much mud. But I feel like the first day, maybe a couple days, we had a good amount of mud. And it was kind of like, there were a few sections that were pretty ridiculous. And I was like, man, there's got to be a better way to build a trail. But when I think about it more, like, I don't know how you would avoid this mud. It's just kind of the terrain. But it wasn't like this thing it wasn't like a gauntlet where I was like, I think I might quit. I don't think I can handle this mud. Like, I mean, I feel like, I don't know if it's hyped to that level, but people definitely talk about how brutal the mud is in Vermont. And for me, it was just like, definitely could have been the time of year. Like that's obviously it's very seasonal, but as a northbound hiker, like I guess we were there a little later, like end of August, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. But it wasn't that, I don't know. I didn't think it was that bad. But
no.
You've lived there, so you've probably seen some shit when it comes to mud in Vermont, if
dude,
I guess.
Yeah. So that's obviously going to play into my opinions on this one. I agree that the mud isn't that bad. But I will say, so that first 30 miles of the AT in Vermont, I had hiked that 3 times before I got there on the AT. And all 3 times, it wasn't that bad. And so as we're approaching Vermont, there's all this hype about the mud. And like my friends are like, oh, Vermont. And I was like, guys, like it's not that bad. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I've been there 3 times. It's fine. And then we got there. And as soon as we crossed that border, it was muddy as shit for 3 days probably. And they were like, Kyle, you're an idiot. Why were you like, this sucks. It's just as bad. And so the like you kind of said there, the first couple days going northbound, it is pretty muddy, but it gets better after that. And so I think it's BS to say all of Pennsylvania is rocky. I kind of think it's BS to say all of Vermont is muddy. Is it more muddy than the South? Yeah, it definitely is. And also keep in mind that first 100 miles of the AT through Vermont gets a lot of foot traffic because not only are all the AT through hikers going on it, but that's also the start of the long trail. And so all the long trail hikers are going through there as well, including pretty much all of them, especially at the very beginning of the state, because most people, yeah, I'd say the majority of people go northbound on the long trail. And so even the ones that don't make it very far are still going to hike that first section. So it just gets a lot of foot traffic and it makes it hard to maintain that part of the trail. They get a lot of rain there too. So it's true that it's muddy, but yeah, I agree that the mud is kind of overrated. Like the hype is kind of ridiculous, but I don't know for mud. Okay. So the next overrated part of the Appalachian Trail, I'm going to say is Grayson Highlands.
Oh boy. Jessica's gonna murder you.
Okay, that's all right. Highlands. That's all right. Okay, so hear me out.
No, she doesn't. She's smiling. She's not mad yet. But
okay,
I don't know. She might be simmering over there.
The reason is because I don't know. I thought the Rowan Highlands were cooler, and I know they're not exactly the same thing or exactly the same area, but I thought the Rowan Highlands were just cooler, better views, longer. But I had never heard of the Rowan Highlands before, but the Grayson Highlands you hear about all the time. And let's be honest, it's because of the ponies, and like the ponies are cool. They're very unique.
Dude, ponies are rad. Yeah.
Baker loves a good pony. I'm pro pony. Okay. I'm not saying we should kill the ponies or anything like that.
Was that ever an option? Was that a suggestion?
Someone was thinking it.
Okay.
No, no, fuck those ponies. No, I like the ponies, okay? The ponies are cool. Like, I took a couple pictures with the ponies, but you're only around them for like a few miles, if I recall. And other than that, I mean, I feel like Grayson Highlands left a lot to be desired. Again, it was cool, but it just wasn't any more epic than anything else. And I think the reason why, to bring this back around, I think the main reason why I put this on the list is because I just thought the Rowan Highlands were so much better. But the Rowan Highlands, you just didn't hear about that often. But the Grayson Highlands everybody knows the Grayson Highlands. So that's my logic here. But I also understand like the ponies are unique and, I don't know. What do you think about this, Baker?
That's so funny. So when I always brainstorm ideas for this with Jessica. So like just so most people know, like most of these ideas are all Jessica's. I'm just like the person talking about them. But when we were discussing this, one section we both agreed that was absolutely not overrated was Grayson Highlands. And one section that I almost included in the list, but didn't because I didn't think it was hyped enough, was the Rowan Highlands. And we were like, if that had been a hype section, I would have included because we were underwhelmed by that particular area. Whereas we loved the Grayson Highlands. We loved the ponies, loved Grayson Highlands.
Wow.
We even Jessica's dad and sister visited they visited us on trail, like kind of when we were in that area, like in Virginia. And we drove back south down to Grayson Highlands and took them on a day hike there because we were like, this was a sick section, which I guess that kind of makes sense. Like if you're going to take someone day hiking, but either way, that shows how much we liked it. And then we had the opposite. We were kind of underwhelmed by Grayson Highlands, but I think part of it was Rowan Highlands, excuse me. Part of it was the experience. So I think it was kind of I don't know, what are the, is it, what bushes is it azaleas that are supposed to bloom? Not azaleas. Or the, not the azaleas. What is that bush? Rhododendron is supposed to be blooming there. And like, it was, I don't know. I think we were hoping it would be blooming and it wasn't. I don't know.
Put a damper on it.
Yeah, I guess so. Thinking back, I don't know. I think for Jessica it was more underrated. I kind of liked it. I thought it was a cool section, but I think for sure I would say that Grayson Highlands was cooler. I don't know. The ponies were just so fun. Like, and I remember thinking like seeing all the signs of like, oh, you're not supposed to pet them. Like, it's so sad I can't pet them. But then they just come right up to you. And I'm like, okay, well, clearly I'm not going to like chase the ponies down to pet them.
Just
like,
to pet them, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're not exactly wild animals, but they're not exactly fully, domesticated animals. So I was like, I'm not going to chase these things down. But when they come right up to you, clearly looking for pets or food or something, I'm like, all right, well, now I'm going to pet this thing. Although they were very dirty. I remember my hands being like really not like just dirt, not like anything else. But they're, I mean, obviously they're not bathing them or anything. So I just remember being like, wow, there's a lot of something on this pony. It's like in my hand, my whole hand is like gray after petting him, but totally worth it. So
maybe that's why maybe that's why I got diarrhea going through there. I'm starting to see a correlation between the places I think are overrated and the places I had diarrhea, because I did have diarrhea going through the Grayson Highlands as well as on McAfee Knob.
Oh, so that was a separate bout of diarrhea.
Well, those two places are close together. I think it might have been. It was an ongoing issue for a little bit there, so I think they were related. But I don't know.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, we liked it, but yeah, I can. It was. What about it was? What were you expecting it to be like, and then it didn't live up to those expectations, I guess.
I don't know. Like, it was cool. The ponies were cool. I think I also pet one. I only know this because there's photographic evidence. I think the biggest thing was I just really wanted to ride one, and I was really hoping to like almost have it be kind of like a Nero that day because I was just on the pony all day. Yeah. And I tried to ride one of those things, and it bucked me right off every single time. A park ranger was there too, and so I ended up getting fined. What
a letdown.
And
if they're ponies, they're meant to be ridden, right?
Why else would they exist? That's not
the
true.
Park. The park keeps them there. I think that's the whole. I mean, it's
bullshit.
It's like total. Like I just don't get it. Come on, Park Service, you can do better than this.
No, I don't know. I just thought it was a little overrated. But
don't ride them, people.
Don't ride them. We're joking.
Don't pet them. I officially never pet them, but unofficially I definitely pet them.
Don't pet them. Don't ride them. Don't look at them. Don't hike the Appalachian Trail. Okay, what's the next overrated part, Baker? This is going to be your last one, so make it good.
Yes, it's my last one. All right. So this is, and I have to clarify how it's overrated, but the 100-mile wilderness.
Oh, spicy.
Overrated in how remote it is, in that it was not as remote as I thought it would be. Like, I don't know. This is again, it's all like there's so much lore and mythology around the Appalachian Trail. And so the 100-mile wilderness is supposed to be this section of just like you're out there. I mean, it's like the name kind of is maybe it's just poorly named, but it's you just expect that it's super remote. There are no really proper resupplies, which is not entirely true. But like there's no easy resupplies, that's for sure. And it is a long section of it, and I mean there really is not much out there. Shelters are by far the most infrastructure you'll see. But I remember being surprised going through there, like there were more roads than I expected. Like I don't think there's any paved roads.
No,
just to get to Eight-Ball Bridge,
dirt, like
just
logging
like
roads.
Dirt.
But they're they're roads. They're not like Jeep trails either. They're like actually like graded for like normal, cars. Yeah. Like you don't have to have high clearance and all that. Well, I guess I haven't driven them, to be fair, so don't go out there with like your Honda Fit and get stuck. But
yeah, well,
they're like proper dirt roads. Like
they are. They're like.
Trails.
Yeah, I mean, from the parts of the AT crossed, I was like, oh, a sedan could drive this, assuming this is like what it looks like all the way to like a, paved road. That's what a sedan could drive this. So that didn't make me think, that was like a little, I mean, again, maybe I think it's the expectation, like I'm going to see nothing man-made except for shelters out here, kind of in a trail. I was like, oh, there's roads. And then also you can even get a resupply by like there's like, I'm pretty sure the shelters on both ends, or the hostels on both ends of the north and south end of the 100-mile wilderness, certainly Shaw's, like will, you can give them food and they will put it in a bucket and they will drive it to the middle and you can just have a resupply out there, which is like, I don't know, if someone's dropping like a resupply out there, that just feels a little bit less like a wilderness area. Again, if it's so convenient that they can charge, it's not even like crazy expensive. It's not like hundreds of dollars to do it. So if they're willing to like, do that for people and not charge a ton of money, it can't be that hard to get out there, I guess is my point. So I remember thinking that. But in general, otherwise I really enjoyed the 100-mile wilderness. And it's not that it wasn't like it ruined it for me to see a road. I just remember being surprised, I guess, and thinking like, this isn't like as much wilderness as I thought it would be.
It's fair. It's fair. No. Yeah. I don't think it's overrated in the sense that it's not cool. I do think, the 100-mile wilderness gets a lot of hype for sure. I think this is one of the spots that lives up to the hype, unlike the shitty Grayson Highlands, obviously. But But yeah, I see what you're saying in terms of like the remoteness. Yeah, it gets hyped up as this like, and it is pretty remote to be fair. But then like compared to the PCT, for instance, like going through the Sierras, I mean, I think, don't quote me on this, but I want to say there was like a 200+ mile stretch of trail with no pavement whatsoever. Like it was something ridiculous like that.
Wow.
Like it's super remote. And then there's, 100-mile plus resupplies all the time. And so, yeah, I see what you're saying there, Baker.
Yeah.
Let's stick to Maine for this last one.
Okay.
The last overrated part of the AT, but not the end of the episode because Baker is going to be sharing a story that literally happened to him today. And so I'm excited to hear that at the end of the episode. But the last overrated part of the AT, I almost didn't include this one. So I'm a little on the fence about this one, but just for the hell of it, I'm going to say Mahoosuc Notch.
Oh, this was almost on the list.
Oh, really? Well. Okay. So my reasoning, so I honestly don't have great reasoning for this. The first like 10 minutes were pretty cool. After that, I just got a little sick of it. To be fair, that's the only reason. But to be fair, it's like I think you're supposed to get sick of it. Like it's hard. They call it the hardest mile in the AT. So I don't think that anyone out there is like, no, it's like just, I don't know. But I just thought it was, maybe I don't agree with this. Maybe it was kind of cool, actually. I don't know. The day that I did Mahoosuc Notch was the hardest day of the entire trail for me. And so maybe that's why it was a little bit like maybe I just wasn't in the mood for it at the time. But I don't know. I just wanted to include it. My reasoning isn't very good here. I really don't have much else to say about it. What do you think about? So why did you almost include it, Baker?
Well, I think it's basically when you're trying to think of a list like this, you're just thinking of anything that is like super notable. And so you like basically I was running through like what are the like because you're overrated is like what is hyped, and then I was comparing what's hyped versus my experience at said place. And so the Mahoosuc Notch is like definitely one of the most iconic sections of trail. And so I was like, was it overhyped? And I was like, I don't think so. Like we considered it just because it was like of places that are very notable and could potentially be overrated. But I mean, I agree. Like it was not like like imagine if like you hear the Mahoosuc Notch and then there's like 3 boulders you have to scramble through and that's it. Like that would be overrated. But it's not. It's a proper mile of just like struggling through it. And it was a challenging day for us as well because we did it at dusk, and so the second half of the thing was like in the dark.
Wait, did you have to go up after the Notch series?
Then we had to go. Then we had to go up. No, sorry. We did not go up that night. There is a shelter or a campground, I think, a campground or a campsite, and on the north end of the Mahoosuc Notch. Thankfully, because we were like pretty exhausted and pretty ragged by the time we got there. Because doing that in the dark was like that was not very fun, and I don't think Jessica's having like a great time because she doesn't love like kind of like frictiony, scrambly kind of stuff. And
the day before I wanted to quit.
And it's also like. She said, she was like pretty ready to quit like around then too. And then she also actually like one thing that was kind of interesting is like for her being short, it was actually kind of challenging. There were parts of like were truly challenging for her. Yeah. If you're taller, you can just kind of like step across a big gap between 2 big boulders. But like if you're shorter, that's a lot sketchier to do that. And it's like you might drop like 15 feet below a couple boulders, and you're certainly gonna get hurt. So. Yeah, it was very challenging, and I'm sure the darkness obviously made it even more challenging. But for us, I mean, it was as scrambly and weird. I remember taking my pack off, crawling through stuff, and it was as challenging as it was more challenging than I expected, simply because we timed it really poorly and like went through. And the other thing is like we started and it probably wasn't even close to dusk. It just took so much longer than we thought that it was like dark by the time we finished, and it was like, well, that was just not safe. It was a bad idea, but. Good story, I guess. So no, for us, that's why in the end it was definitely not overrated. Part of it would be of our experience, but even if you did in the daylight, it's definitely the most challenging mile. I mean, it's definitely like it is a mile of just bouldery, scrambly stuff, which was really fun. I enjoyed it, but it was challenging. So no, I wouldn't say overrated. But even you seemed like you were kind of as you're explaining your reasoning, you're like, I actually don't really know why.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's do a story, Baker. So, Baker told me right before we started recording, he's like, by the way, I had something crazy, or I don't remember if crazy was the word. He's like, I have an end of episode story that happened today. Of course, not the time that you're hearing this, but as of the day of this recording. So it's the end of the episode, Baker. Take it away, dude. What happened?
Yeah. Okay. So actually, the fact that you ended on Mahoosuc Notch is like very fitting for this story. So I was on a hike that I'd never done before, and I was kind of going up. This was like not even very early on in the hike. It was kind of maybe 10 minutes into the hike, and I get to a section where there's kind of some big bouldery things, and I'm kind of like climbing across them, and there's like three guys like who are kind of ahead of me. They're like just sitting there, like kind of looking at the view. And they are I'm like kind of catching up to them, and they're just sitting there hanging out. As I get there, I'm about to kind of like climb past them, and they say, "Oh, if you go down into this kind of crevasse in the rocks, it's kind of like there's big boulders, and I'm walking on top of, but then there's like an opening in the boulders, and then it drops down like 20 feet. So it's definitely the kind of thing you would absolutely not want to fall into. And it just kind of looks like it just is a big, gap in there, like down and under the rocks. And like, if I looked at it, I would just assume it kind of just dead ends down in there. And they're like, no, if you go down in there and you climb a little ways into this kind of, essentially it's like a cave and down in there, you will find a really narrow constriction that you can then climb up through, and it will take you pop out back up on the surface on like just a little ways up the trail. It's like not very far, but basically they were like, if you go down in there and you climb through, you will pop back up, and it's kind of cool. They're like, it's a really narrow thing, and they're like, you'll probably have to take your backpack off to kind of shimmy in there. And so I was like, wow, it's definitely very narrow. And I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Like I'm going up anyway, and it is in the direction of up. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll give this a go. So the guys, I'm like, yeah, I like tell them like, yeah, thanks for the tip. And they start climbing down. And then I'm like, I kind of backtrack a bit, go down to this crevasse. And I mean, now I'm like, I get down to the bottom, and I really am probably like the rocks are probably like 10 feet above my head now. I'm way down in there. It's like quite dark. I mean, it really like is a lot like parts of the Mahoosuc Notch, where it really it's surprising how dark it gets when as soon as you just get like, little ways below the ground. And so I kind of like, I'm like start to go in there, but it's quite dark. And I'm assuming when I get down in there, I'm going to be able to see the light from this supposed like little, squeeze thing that you can go through to get out. I don't see any light. It's just dark. So I get my get my phone out, turn the light on, and I keep going further in. There's some kind of like narrow things that I have to like squeeze through. Kind of, they're just vertical squeezes. And so I'm like, maybe that's what they're talking about, but it wasn't that narrow. And I keep going, and I don't see any light in there. And I just keep going. And eventually I haven't gone that far, but I've gone maybe like, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and I still don't see this hole. And I'm like, I'm not going to go spelunking down here. Like if I don't see this way out, like within the next, like around the next corner, like I'm just going to backtrack.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to think these guys are just like trolling me, and like there's like nothing down here. But then I like turn one more corner, and I see just like a little bit of light kind of coming through the ceiling. And I like so I'm like, okay. And so I go a little further in, and I shine the light, and then I see it, and it's a pretty narrow constriction. I'm like, I'll fit through that. But it's basically like, I mean, the constriction is basically almost a vertical, like it's just almost like a horizontal crack in the surface of the rocks you're kind of going through. So you have to crawl kind of directly up through it, like I guess up towards the surface, if you will. So you're not like squeezing through it like kind of laterally along the bottom of the like cave floor. You have to crawl up. And so I'm like, oh, it looks cool. So I get there, and I'm like, yeah, I definitely got to take my pack off. Like I'm not going to fit through. So I take my pack off, and I put it above me, kind of like at the surface, kind of like, yeah, a little bit above like the surface where like I'm going to be crawling to whenever I get out of this like narrow constriction. And the surface is like a little slanted. So I kind of put my pack on there, and it starts to like move a bit. So I'm like, that's not stable. And then I kind of feel around my hand. I feel there's like a flat surface, like kind of out of my sight. And so I like, oh, let me just move my bag a little bit further. And there's like a bunch of rocks up there. And so I kind of just assume that there's rocks everywhere up there. And I kind of put my bag up, and then I push it a little bit. And I push it, and then I hear sliding. I hear like the sound of my bag sliding on rocks. And then I hear nothing for like a second and a half. And then I hear like a thunk.
Oh.
Which is clearly the sound of my bag hitting something. But the sound sounds like it's not near where I am. It sounds like it's clearly like on another part of this underground crevasse system. And it also sounded like it just sounded far away, much further away than I expected.
Okay.
And the fact that there was like a sliding sound, I knew that it kind of took off a bit. And then there was no sound for like probably a second and a half. And then a thunk. And I'm like, okay, well, it wasn't that, it was like a second and a half. How far could it have fallen in that time? And I'm thinking, well, I'll just get up there. It's probably fell in a little hole. I'll just reach down in, pull it out. But as I'm like shimmying up, I'm thinking that was things fall quickly, like in a short amount of time, right? I'm thinking like that thing, like I'm just like, trying to stay positive, like tell myself, yeah, I'll be able to reach it. But like I'm in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like that thing fell pretty far. Like it was a long silence before I heard the time when it hit whatever it got stopped on. And so I'm like, okay, this is great. So shimmy up into this constriction. I get like my torso up in there and I look to where I was trying to put my bag, like where the last place I'd saw it before it slid off. And I see that there is a hole there, but it is just complete darkness. Like I don't see anything. Boy. And like I was seeing there's light coming into the ceiling. There's like, I can see kind of like where my feet are. Like I can see that it's illuminated enough like down where my feet are. But this hole is like off to the side and there is literally it's just like pitch black in there. And so in my bag I was like my phone, my wallet, the keys to my bike lock because I'd ridden my bike to the trailhead. It's like all my food, all my water, everything. Thankfully, like for context, I am like, this is a hike like in the Front Range of Denver. Like I'm near a city. Like I'm probably not going to die. I definitely wouldn't die. But my bag is like, I just like, I can't see anything down there. And I would normally just pull out a light and look down. My phone's down there. And this isn't like really a trail up here. Like I was kind of scrambling and I was kind of surprised to see other people up there. So it's not like there's other people coming by frequently. And so I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to reach down into this dark hole, but I also am going to get my bag. So I just kind of like shimmy my body up a little bit. The other thing is I don't even really know what's down there. I don't know what it looks like. And my big fear is like I fall in there. Like I've heard stories of people like even in their own house, like they try to reach for something behind their dresser and they fall and they get wedged like with their head down and they end up just dying. Like people don't find them. No, that's like if you go on like
that's terrifying.
This is like it's a thing. Like you literally if you get suspended like head down for long enough, you will just die. Yeah. I don't know what it's from exactly, but and this was like obviously that's unusual, someone dying in their house, but it was like a person who lived alone and no one came by to check on them. And then eventually someone's like, haven't heard from so-and-so, they came by, they were dead. Like literally were stuck like between their dresser and their wall, trying to get something behind, ostensibly they were trying to grab something down behind there and they literally got wedged there and they couldn't get out. And I was like, that could definitely happen. I also don't know I didn't know, like maybe it's a huge drop down there. Like, the Mahoosuc Notch, there's parts that like, it's like 15, 20 feet where it drops down in cracks between the rocks. Like I have no idea what it looks like. So, I stick my arm down in there, like as far as I'm comfortable, but really it wasn't very far because I was just like, the worst thing is I get stuck in here. There's not a trail above me. Like no one's going to come by and then I actually could die instead of just my bag being lost. And so I stick my arm down in there. I don't feel anything. It's just empty space. And I also was pretty sure that it had fallen further than my arm length, like for sure it did. So I'm like, I really don't know what to do. I was like, I also thought I could try to go feet first in there and like maybe my legs are long enough to like feel it and I could kind of like hook my foot in there and pull it up. I was like, that's another way to get stuck in this hole. And I'm like, I just don't want to do this. So my next thought is I just need to get a source of light to evaluate what's going on in this hole. So I shimmy up through the rest of this, to the rest of the constriction. I get to the surface. I didn't start just bombing it down the trail because I'm like, I haven't seen many other people around here. There's not really a trail up here. I was just surprised there were other people. So I was like, I hope I can catch this group of guys. And I've been down in here stuck for like 10 minutes trying to get my bag. So I'm like, I don't know how far down they are. So I just bomb it. And again, it's not really a trail. There's kind of trails, but I didn't know where they were. I'd never been up there and I was kind of like panicking. So I just took like kind of a use trail. Looks like just like kind of like an animal trail. Mm-hmm. And I end up getting really far down. I'm like, where are these guys? I can't see them. Eventually I get like almost to the parking lot and I'm like, wow, I've just bombed down this whole thing, like through the bushes trying to catch them. And I don't see anyone in the parking lot. And so then then I hit the actual trail. I hit an established trail. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Yep. And so I like turn and I go back uphill. I'm like, I probably went past them. And then I do run into them going uphill. But then right behind them uphill is it's some rock climbers carrying like bouldering pads. So this is apparently a bouldering area. So there are like, you can go bouldering in this area. And I didn't realize that going up. And so they're like, first of all, the guys are so confused. They're like, what are you doing down here? How'd you get past us? Because they knew where the trail was. I didn't. And then to clarify, when I went up, I got lost in the trail and I kind of bushwhacked to the place that they were at. So I really didn't know, like, I was very disoriented in this area.
Yeah.
And I didn't have my phone to like look where I was. So basically they were surprised. I explained what happened. Like, dude, that sucks. And I was like, I was going to ask to borrow your phone or like some kind of light source, but there's climbers up here. I'm going to just go ask them because they were like heading out. I didn't want to make them stay. I don't know how long it was going to take me to try to extract my bag.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, we have a good day. And I keep running up the trail. I catch up to the climbers and I'm like in my head thinking like, how am I going to explain this? Like, how do I explain this situation? Because basically I'm either going to ask them to come with me way off away from where the climbing is and go look down in this weird crevasse, or I'm just going to like borrow their phone and then go, just go way off away from where they are and like take their phone. And I'm like, I don't know what this is going to be like, but I gotta try. So I just kind of interrupt them and I was like, hey, excuse me. And I'm like, I try to explain like my bag. I was like, this sounds like the dumbest like explanation for something. Like my bag got stuck in a hole and I can't see it because it's too dark. And like, it's just like, I don't know how to explain this. And I was like kind of out of breath because I was running uphill to catch them. And so I was like, just sound like a madman.
Yeah.
And luckily these people were nice and they were like, oh yeah, like let's go. And I was like, no, if you want, like, I feel bad making you go up there. Like, let's go to where you're going to go climbing, like your bouldering spot, get set up. And then I will just take the phone and I'll go and look for it. And like, oh, that sounds good. So like, we go a little ways up the trail, get to their bouldering spot. And then this woman just gives me her phone. And I'm like, I literally could just run off with this phone right now. But I had no bag and they had nothing. So maybe I guess they did believe and they trusted me enough. And so I get the phone, climb back up to where the hole was. I go back down in there. And I like the first thing I'm thinking is like, I do not want to drop this phone down in the hole because I was like, that would be so bad.
Hey,
I like
you
come back down.
Can I get another one?
Yeah. You guys have another phone? Yeah. I was like, oh God. So I like shine the light down in there and I think I see the bag. It's not that far, but it's probably like 5-6 feet somewhere between where I'm like where the edge of the hole is essentially where I can reach from.
Yeah.
And my first thought, which is like, I don't know if I'm an idiot, but my first thought is my arms are not long enough, but my legs are pretty long. So I take my shoe off and my sock off, thinking that like my bare foot will have enough dexterity to like grab. Jessica's dying laughing over here. She's like I have no dexterity to like grab it. So I get my shoe off and I like shimmy my leg down in this hole. And again, I'm thinking if I fall in, that's the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And my leg's not kneeling. My leg is it's not 5 feet long. It's like, maybe 3 feet at most. And so I'm just like, what am I doing right now? And I'm like just down in this dark, dank hole, like got my leg stuck in there. I'm like, this is stupid. So I'm like, okay, just like, I know it's going to be annoying to climb out of here again and climb back in, but there are some scrubby trees up there, thankfully, because not all places in Colorado, like especially near like the lower elevations, like in Denver, have trees, but there were some trees up there. I was like, just get a limb, try to use the limb to like dig the bag out. So I climb all the way out. I like find a couple limbs that might work. I was like, I don't know what kind of limb's going to work best. So I like grabbed options because I don't want to climb out of this hole again. And I like bring them back down in there. And I kind of just again had to crawl back down in this constriction. I'm like in there again. And it took a while to get the stick down there because it's very narrow, but I finally got it. And I am like touching the bag, but I'm trying to hook it on a place where like there's kind of a loop, but then I like push the loop and now I can't get that loop. So I basically ended up just jamming the stick into the mesh pocket on the outside of the bag. And just like kind of jammed it in there. And the mesh is like kind of like grabbed onto the wood and I like pulled it up, but then like I can't get two hands in this hole to like then pull it to grab the bag. So I basically kind of like stick my torso more in there. And then eventually I get one of my hands on the bag. And I'm like, the feeling of like the fabric is like, feels so good. I'm like, oh, I'm so close. And I like haul it out and I'm like holding the bag in front of my face because there's like, that's all the space I have. And I'm just like so happy to see my bag. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I start checking like, did anything fall out of the pockets? Because my phone was in an outside pocket. Yeah. It also kind of opened up as it fell in. And so I was afraid that like my wallet and stuff fell out. Everything's there from what I can tell. And so I just very carefully, like, I don't want anything to fall in this hole again. I very carefully put her phone in my bag. I like put everything in the inside of the bag so nothing falls out of the pockets. And I put my shoe and sock back on. Then I shimmy out of this thing. And then I climb back down. I find the people. And then I like tell them the whole story because I'm a little more calmed down. I'm like, I should probably like give them some background as to why I had, you know, and I did have a bag now. So at least they believe me. Like I didn't have a bag before, I have one now. So it seems believable. And I explain it to them and they're just like, that's crazy. And I'm like, I can't thank you enough for like, because there's no way I could have like used that. I mean, it would have been very difficult to use the stick. I would have just literally been like in the dark, groping around, trying to like find the bag. There's just no way. So the light was like essential to like her phone light was essential to me, like in precisely hooking that one part of the bag to yank it up. But anyway, so then I was supposed to climb to the top of this peak and I was like, I'm done with this one. I'm heading back down. Like I've had enough adventure up here for today. So I just head back down and I'm just like the whole way, I'm just like so excited to have my bag. I'm like, this is like the most, I don't know. It was crazy. So I was like, I guess like in the end I could have, if I couldn't get the bag, I could have like gone down, borrowed a phone, called Jessica. She could have come pick me up. I could have gone home and grabbed like tools, like a headlamp and then like other stuff to pull it out. But basically I was like, this could have, I mean, it would have been like a worst case scenario. Also, no one would have found the bag and stolen it. Like it was literally so far hidden down there. But anyway, that's my story. And I feel like from now I've definitely like, I don't know, in hindsight, obviously it was stupid just to push my bag up into an area that I couldn't see. I mean, there were not like holes around me where I was down, like where I was. So I didn't even think about the fact that there might be like other holes like that were just like lead to other, you know, spaces in there that I couldn't access. So either way, if I'm ever like in that kind of situation, like a Mahoosuc Notch just could totally happen. If you just put your bag in the wrong place, it slides down like, and it could easily slide way too far down and you couldn't grab it. Like there's a few places I remember like it's really deep down there. So anyway, if anyone's like going through the Mahoosuc Notch or climbing through caves or whatever, it also made me think, what do spelunkers do? Like when they're going through caves and they have to take their bag off to like, or just in general, like so they don't drop things, like drop a headlamp. They must have like some really good, I'm sure they've thought about this, but either way, if I'm ever like in a cave or canyoneering or anything in this kind of vein, I'm definitely going to be very careful where I put my bag and to not eject it somewhere that I can't see. But anyway, that's my wild story from today.
You got it.
Yeah.
I was like, I knew you must have gotten it back because you're recording this on your phone right now. So
well, that's the other thing. I was like, I don't know your number. So I was like, I'm going to have to, I guess I was like, I could find him on Instagram. I could like use Jessica's phone to like hit you on Instagram. But I was like, I was supposed to record like, this is at like 2:00. This is like maybe 3 hours, less than 3 hours before we're supposed to record today.
Wow.
And I'm like, I got to get this. I'm also going to take me forever to get home. Like, I guess if Jessica picked me up, I probably could have got home in time. But I was like, and also I'd have no way to like, you'd be texting me,
you could have
bro,
canceled,
where are you?
Baker. You could have canceled.
No, but I couldn't have. I would have just been radio silence because you would have been like, where are you? And I would have been like, I couldn't have responded. So I was like, I got to like.
Incredible.
So anyway, that's what happened.
You got
today.
your bag. Wow.
Dude,
I
was
hanging on to every sentence there.
Yeah. It was, I feel like I was like, wow, this is actually like one of the most exciting things I've had happen hiking in years. Like,
God bless those climbers.
It all turned out, oh, seriously, they were so nice. They were very trusting.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have let someone just run off with my phone like that, especially someone that looked like you. Like, even even knowing you, I still don't think I would have let you. So that's just an incredible stroke of luck to counter your incredible stroke of bad luck and poor decision making. So incredible.
Was exciting. Yep.
Whew, that was a good one.
Sorry, that was kind of a long story, but there's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of detail in there. So.
No, that's important. It's also important to say, Baker, happy early birthday. Tomorrow is Baker's birthday, which I did not know until Jessica texted me just before we started recording. So thank you, Jessica.
That was the thing I almost wanted to say to those climbers. I thought about it later and I was like, you gave me the best birthday present ever, which was like getting my bag back. You know, it's like nothing could top this probably.
Yeah, so, dude. I can't imagine spending my 54th birthday any better way. So,
dude, I'm too old for this shit. I'm too old to be groveling around in dark, dank, like crawl spaces.
Kudos for using the word dank in its proper form, because the only time I've ever heard that word used is,
Yeah. You don't want to get demonetized, but yes, I mean it was. Well, I hope you don't by just me using it, but it was it was cold and wet down there. If that's not dank, I don't know what is. So.
That is some dank shit.
Oh boy.
Thank you, Baker. Our next episode will hopefully be in person. So
yes.
Fingers crossed that works out. Thank you for coming on. Again, the most common. You've done like almost 20. Is this 19?
Yeah, we counted it last time. It's 19, like close to that.
Yeah, the 19th episode of Trail Tales. And the very first one on video.
Everyone's a blast. I know, it's true. I hope I don't look dumb. I'm gonna be embarrassed watching the YouTube
video. You look
great. Good. All right, good.
All right. Thank you, Baker, and thank you so much for watching, everybody. If you made it this far into the episode, dude, subscribe, man. You got to subscribe to the YouTube, or if you're listening, you got to leave a 5-star review and share this with a friend. That's an underrated thing for podcasters to say. We're always going on about the reviews, but share this episode with a friend. That's a great way to help support the show, and it costs you nothing except for a friendship potentially if they hate it. Thank you so much for listening and watching, everybody, and I'll see you guys next week. Woo! Against all odds.
Yeah.
We've done it.